Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about phylum Echinodermata, their characteristics and body systems. First off, I want to share with you some characteristics that we'll see presented in echinoderms. The first one is a five-way or pentamerous radial symmetry. You'll see that things like sea stars exhibit this visually, you'll be able to see it right away, a five-way radial symmetry. Other things like the sea cucumber might be a little bit more difficult to discern, but echinoderms will all have this five-way radial symmetry, except for when they're larvae. So scientists take this as being a link to a common ancestor between organisms that are a little bit more complex and have bilateral symmetry. And these critters, the echinoderms, they could have possibly shared an ancestor because of this bilateral presentation that you see only in the larval stage of the echinoderms. As they mature into adulthood, they grow out of that bilateral symmetry into radial. Could have been because of it's better off for the way that they were feeding and that sort of thing. So whatever the case may be, they do have this larval stage where the larvae is bilaterally symmetrical. The third thing is because they are radial, they don't have a head, so they are not cephalized. Fourthly, they all have an endoskeleton, so the skeleton is covered in a thin layer of tissue, an epidermis. Fifth, there is a spiny skin, which is actually what echinoderm means. Derm means skin, like dermatologist, and echino means rough or bumpy. So we see these spines exhibited in different ways. Sea urchins obviously can have really large spines, all the way to sand dollars, which have very tiny spines. And they're all presented in this water vascular system, which is incredibly important because they have the water flowing through their body, which leads them to have support systems. It's also part of the respiratory and the circulatory systems. It's part of their diffusion processes. So the water vascular system has a whole variety of different uses and functions. First thing here I want to show you is the orientation. So we have here two sea stars. One is showing you its aboral surface, or the top surface. So because these guys are radially symmetrical, there's no front or back. We talk about where their mouth is located, and then we talk about where their mouth is not located. So they have an aboral surface, which is this guy here, the top surface that you would see if he was walking around. And then the underside, the surface that you normally wouldn't see if you just found a sea star in the wild, is the oral surface. And the mouth here is right in the center of that center disc where all the arms meet in the center. The other thing I want to point out here is the umbilical grooves. That's the groove that runs through the arm here, and that's where all the tube feet that the creature uses in its water vascular system and for locomotion, that's where all those tubes are attached. So the tubes come out of the umbilical grooves. The nervous system here is very similar to what we might see in Cnidaria. There's a nerve net. So A is pointing out a nerve ring, and B are pointing out the peripheral nerves that run throughout the arms. So there is a nerve that runs through the arms that have little secondary nerves that run off of the side all the way to the tip, where at the tip of each ray you're going to find, like is shown right here in the red, is an eye spot. So the eye spot is made up of hundreds of little tiny light cells called ocelli. They're cells that pick up light, so it can see light and dark differences, and that goes all the way around them, since they have one at the end of each tip of the arm. The other thing that they have in terms of their nervous system is they can use their skin and their tube feet to sense different things in their environment. So if you touch a tube foot, it will move away from you and pull back down in the umbilical groove. They're sensitive to touch, to temperature. They can sense chemicals in their environment that might come from a food source or might come from a predator, like a chemical. If a crab is walking by, that they might be able to pick up on that. And that's around their skin and their tube feet regions. Next, we've got our digestive system here, and there's a lot of extra stuff on this diagram that we'll be talking about. You'll notice some of the things will look familiar if you go back and take a look at this diagram later. For example, here's the water vascular system and the little tube feet. But we're going to just look here at the blue, which is the digestive system. It's all colored in blue. So we've got a mouth here on the oral side of the animal, and we've got a cardiac stomach. And the cardiac stomach is the main stomach, and the cardiac stomach is the first step in the digestive process. Food will go into the cardiac stomach to be digested. And often with sea stars, which is what's pictured here, that cardiac stomach can come out of the mouth. They'll push it out of the body, hang the stomach out of the mouth onto a clam that they've wrestled open, and they'll digest that soft mollusk body into a liquid using digestive enzymes, and then absorb that liquid into this cardiac stomach, and then pull the stomach back into the body. So they definitely have an odd way of feeding themselves. They do have a secondary stomach that will also aid in digestion. You'll see the little bulb coming off of the main cardiac stomach. It's called a pyloric stomach. So you can see on this side from up above, the larger circle is the cardiac stomach. The smaller circle on top of that is the pyloric stomach. And attached to the pyloric stomach are these branches called pyloric ceca. We've seen ceca in squids, and the ceca is responsible for taking the digestive juices from the stomach and spreading that nutrition out through the body. So these little branches will bring nutrition all the way out into the arms. Then whatever's left will be pushed up and out the anus. So the anus is located on the aboral, or the top surface of the organism. The excretory system is next. There are no special organs for the excretory system, but there is a special little appendage here. They used diffusion to get rid of the excretory waste, mostly ammonia, and on their skin they have these little growths called papillae. And the papilla will branch up and they form little bumps. You can see them with the microscope, and it just adds extra surface area. So oxygen can come in, CO2 can leave, and also not pictured here is ammonia. So ammonia is the main waste that's given off in the excretory system, and so that ammonia will just diffuse out through the little papilla. In the circulatory and respiratory system here, we have our water vascular system. This organism, they have no blood, no true blood, they have no heart, they have a coelomic fluid that will flow around through their body in the coelom, and that will bring about different cells and things like that can help fight infection. But mostly the circulatory and the respiratory systems are just filled with water, and the water will bring in oxygen, and the water will help flow the nutrition around through the body as well. So the way this works is we've got this little disc on the surface. You can see this disc on the organism from the outside. It's called a madrepore. And that has little openings where water can diffuse down into the madrepore, into the hole, and then it runs through this tube called a stone canal. And it's kind of a hardened surface. It's got calcium carbonate on the outside. And that stone canal then will lead the water through the ring canal due to hydrostatic pressure, water pressure. And it'll run through that ring canal and out through all of the radial canals, which lead down through each arm. And the radial canals have little branches off of each side, and the branches here, they're not labeled, but they're called lateral canals. And those lateral canals then will lead to ampullae. And they're like little bulbs that will squeeze and contract and create water pressure that will squirt out of the tube feet and creates a pressure that can be like a suction cup or a vacuum to be able to move around. Our reproductive system here is they're usually separate sexes. They have external fertilization. There are gonads in each arm that are underneath of the digestive gland. So I don't want you to get confused here. The digestive gland isn't in one ray and the gonads aren't in another. All of these systems run throughout each ray. This is just showing you for ease the radius